welcome to the deep dive. Today, well, we're doing something a bit different. We're focusing in on just one historical source. And our mission really is to unpack this text. It describes the effects, often kind of paradoxical, of a substance that's, well, fascinated people for ages.
Right.
The source. It's excerpts from Cannabis Indica, Homeopathic Materia Medica by William Boericke. And just for context, Materia Medica back then wasn't just theory. It was like a detailed list of symptoms.
Yeah, observed symptoms, often from provings, right? Self-experimentation.
Exactly. On healthy people. So these aren't guesses. They're carefully recorded subjective experiences from within that specific medical view of the
It's
time.
a very specific framework.
So the question we're asking in this deep dive is, how does this specific text, this historical medical text, describe the unique impacts of cannabis indica, particularly, on the mind and perception?
And what insights can we get from it?
Yeah, what can we learn from these really detailed, almost sort of anecdotal observations about how they understood medicine, maybe even consciousness itself?
And what's really striking, I think, is that Boericke's text gives us this window into how these effects were cataloged way before modern neuroscience could even touch it.
Right, long before brain scans and things.
Exactly. It goes deep into the subjective side. Intense exaggeration, these states of exaltation, and that really fascinating idea of a dual nature state.
That dual nature part sounds interesting.
It is, and even if you've never experienced anything like this yourself, this deep dive hopefully lets you glimpse these profound alterations of consciousness, of reality,
Yeah.
just as described by this physician from, well, a completely different era.
Okay, so let's start where Boericke starts. He points out how cannabis indica inhibits the higher faculties and stimulates the imagination to a remarkable degree.
Without any marked stimulation of the lower or animal instinct.
Yeah. That's quite a specific way to begin, isn't it?
Yeah.
It immediately frames it as affecting the mental landscape primarily.
Absolutely. Not just physical urges or instincts. It's about the mind first.
And then he dives right in, describing a condition of intense exaltation.
Where everything, perceptions, ideas, feelings, sensations, are all exaggerated to the utmost degree.
So it's not just feeling happy or good.
No, it's like everything's turned up to 11. An amplification of all stimuli, internal and external. It sounds like a kind of overload almost.
Challenging, normal experience, you could say.
Definitely.
And then Boericke brings in this concept that really makes you stop and think. This subconscious or dual nature state.
Yeah, that's the one.
He describes feeling apparently under the control of the second self, and this is key, the original self prevents the performance of acts which are under the domination of the second self.
So like a built-in safety switch. One acting as a check upon the other.
Exactly. A mental failsafe.
Yeah.
I mean, what does that suggest about how they understood consciousness back then?
Well, it's pretty profound, actually. It raises huge questions about consciousness, especially in altered states. He actually writes, "The experimenter feels ever and anon that he is distinct from the subject of the hashish dream and can think rationally."
So even deep inside the experience.
Right. There's still a part that's watching, observing, separate, able to think rationally.
That sounds like metacognition, thinking about your own thinking.
Pretty much, yeah. An early recognition of it, even amidst this profound alteration, that's a really significant observation for its time.
Yeah.
It hints at, the layers of our own awareness.
It really does. Okay, so building on that mental shift, Boericke spends a lot of time on what many people probably associate most strongly with cannabis indica, the effect on time and space.
Yes, the classic effects.
The text describes the most remarkable hallucinations and imaginations, but then stresses exaggeration of the duration of time and extent of space being most
The
characteristic.
good core of it.
And he says it plainly, conception of time, space, and place is gone. Not just slowed down, but gone.
Completely disintegrated. Those basic frameworks we rely on just dissolve.
Wow.
And that's where you get those incredibly vivid lines. Time seems too long, seconds seem ages, a few rods, an immense distance.
That's so specific.
It is. And it's not just a footnote, it's a major observation. It shows really early on that our sense of time isn't fixed, it's subjective, shaped by our internal state.
And the fact he documented this so clearly, just from what people describe.
Exactly. long before modern science could really measure it. It's a truly remarkable historical insight. It makes you question how much of our reality is, built inside our heads.
Absolutely. And the emotional shifts he describes are just as dramatic.
Oh, definitely. A real roller coaster.
He says the person can be extremely happy and contented, nothing troubles, full of exuberance of spirits, even uncontrollable laughter.
Pure joy almost.
So then, almost in the next breath, he lists anxious depression, constant fear of becoming insane.
That rapid swing. It's startling. From euphoria to intense anxiety and fear.
Sometimes even losing their sense of self, where one cannot realize her identity. It just paints this picture of extreme mental fluidity.
It really does suggest a very unpredictable mental state. Not one consistent feeling, but this whole spectrum. Ideas crowding in, getting lost in delicious thought, but also, not being able to finish sentence, being very forgetful.
So both creativity and confusion, side by side.
Precisely. It highlights that really disorienting, sometimes contradictory psychological effect Boericke was seeing. It's like a temporary dissolving of the stable self.
Okay, so beyond these huge mental changes, Boericke was also really careful about noting specific physical sensations.
Yes, very meticulous there too.
He talks about the head feeling as if top of head were opening and shutting, and as if calvarium were being lifted.
Which is such a bizarre specific image.
Isn't it? Or that other one, the sensation in anus as if sitting on a ball. These aren't vague feelings. They show how even basic bodily perception gets warped.
And what's fascinating is how he weaves these mental alterations together with these very specific, sometimes paradoxical physical notes.
Paradoxical how?
Well, for instance, he mentions a great soothing influence in many nervous disorders, things like epilepsy or delirium tremens, suggesting it calms certain neurological issues.
You get a calming effect.
But then elsewhere in the text, he also describes things like entire paralysis of the lower extremities or feeling very exhausted after a short walk.
So weakness and paralysis alongside soothing effects.
Exactly. That dual nature again, showing up both mentally and physically. It's a recurring theme, really underscoring the substance's complex impact.
He also includes things like the pulse very slow or grinding of teeth in sleep, little details. And that modality section, that seems pretty key for understanding homeopathic practice itself.
Oh, absolutely crucial.
It notes symptoms are worse in the morning, from coffee, liquor, tobacco, lying on the right side, but better from fresh air, cold water, rest. What's the significance of including all that?
Well, these modalities, what makes things better or worse, were fundamental in homeopathy. They give us a real insight into the holistic approach back then.
Try to see the whole picture.
Right. How the substance interacted with everyday things, diet, environment, even how you sleep. It shows a level of detail that points to a really observational, patient-focused approach, trying to map the effects onto the whole person's experience.
And he relates it to other substances too.
Yeah, he notes its relationship to others, mentioning that anhelonium, which is peyote, also messes with time perception, making minutes seem hours.
So he was comparing and contrasting.
Exactly. Systematically organizing what was known about different substances and their shared effects, building a comparative knowledge base.
Okay, so we've really taken a deep dive into Boericke's 19th century view of cannabis indica here.
We have?
And what really stands out, I think, are those intense distortions of time and space, second seem ages, a few rods, and immense distance. That's just mind-bending. And the sheer range of mental states, from that exuberance of spirits and laughter all the way to anxious depression and the fear of becoming insane.
It covers such extremes.
Plus those physical paradoxes we talked about, like the entire paralysis alongside the soothing influence in some nervous conditions. It's complex.
It really is. And Boericke's detailed observations, they just underscore how deeply our perception of reality, time, space, even who we are, is tied to our internal state.
That idea of the original self, checking the second self too.
That's so striking, isn't it? It suggests this layered consciousness. Like you said, even when things are profoundly altered, it makes you wonder, what does it mean to be aware of an altered state while you're in it?
Yeah, and how much of our reality is just constructed around us, by us. Which I suppose leaves us with a pretty provocative thought to consider, doesn't it? If a substance can so radically change our fundamental grasp of time and space, making seconds seem ages, or wiping out our conception of time, space, and place altogether, what does that really tell us about the objective nature of reality itself?
Right. Is there even such a thing?
And maybe just how much of the world we experience is actually constructed fundamentally inside our own minds.
Ugh.